Some artists are simply too renowned and have made an imprint on the globe that no one can ever match. The British band The Beatles is one of these types of artists. Until recently, the Beatles songs could really pamper the ears and hypnotize anyone who listened to their whole career. If they are exhausted, unhappy, pleased, or enthusiastic, the Beatles songs can often restore positive energy and excitement to continue with everyday activities. With over 1 billion cassettes and CDs sold worldwide, the band remains the market leader in music sales. Meanwhile, they impacted numerous forms of music that exist today, including pop, rock, rock and roll, power pop, Britpop, hard rock, folk rock, blues, heavy metal, psychedelic, krautrock, and techno music. Furthermore, the Beatles were the first to attempt with combining traditional Indian music with Western music. People all over the world are still listening to their tunes at the same time, and their fan base continues to grow regardless of how long the band has been around. In today's video, we'll talk about the bands that were influenced by the Beatles, so stay with us till the end and subscribe to our channel. The Black Sabbath. The main point to emphasize is that Ozzy Osbourne, the frontman of Black Sabbath, is a huge fan of John Lennon. This is demonstrated by the single How, which Ozzy specifically launched in memory of John Lennon. It all started when Osbourne heard the tune She Loves You decades ago. The song that had the most impact on me was the Beatles' She Loves You, he told reporters. Black Sabbath began 5 years after the release of She Loves You in 1963. Growing up in Birmingham, England, Osbourne couldn't deny that the Fab Four from Liverpool inspired him to pursue a career as a musician. If you're enjoying the video so far, hit the like button down below and subscribe for more Beatles content. This song was so amazing that I felt hit by lightning. I can even recall where I was and what I was doing. I was walking with a blue transistor radio at the time, and the song suddenly came on and I gazed. And that occurrence forever altered my life. I understood exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to be a singer in a band. Osbourne said again. Not only is Ozzy Osbourne the singer of the song She Loves You, but he is also a fan of John Lennon. For Osbourne, Lennon represents a musician who is skilled at penning lyrics. John Lennon is an excellent word processor. He has a fantastic way of making ridiculous lyrics interesting and sophisticated, Osbourne stated. Previously, John Lennon claimed that the world's first heavy metal record was Ticket to Ride, Help, 1965. Another powerful song by John Lennon, Day Tripper, has been widely covered by heavy metal bands such as Jimi Hendrix and Van Halen. U2. The Irish band U2 openly claimed to be influenced by the Beatles in the 1980s. U2's entire band is a huge fan of the Beatles, and they frequently cover various Beatles songs during their concerts and fan events. Fun fact, on his 60th birthday, Bono wrote the Beatles the following letter. Dear Beatles, Bono began his message. It's my very first musical recollection. I'm 3 years old, and I live in the back garden of 10 Cedarwood Road. Maybe that's how simple the messianic complex may begin. Your admirers, Bono. U2 has covered various Beatles songs throughout the years, including Help, Helter Skelter, Happiness is a Warm Gun, All You Need Is Love, Across the Universe, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and In My Life. U2 covered numerous songs while performing on stage during their High tour, including the Beatles' version of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They even enlisted longtime Beatles colleague Chris Thomas to co-produce their CD. And, as if that wasn't enough of a fan, Bono argues that the Beatles are Irish. In 2015, during a memorial to John Lennon in New York, in the presence of Yoko Ono, Bono expressed his desire to claim the Beatles as Irish. Oasis. A band from Manchester, England, who debuted in 1994 with the album Definitely Maybe and has frequently been in the public limelight, adored the Beatles as well. Nobody else but Oasis. Apart from being of high quality and frequently making contentious statements in the media, the band led by Liam and Noel Gallagher was heavily influenced by the Beatles. Their favorite Beatles song is Ticket to Ride. In fact, the Gallagher brothers insist that they will never abandon their love for the Beatles. A number of media outlets also claim that the Manchester-based Brit pop band was a direct descendant of the Beatles. Oasis's most frequently covered Beatles song is John Lennon's I Am the Walrus, which appeared on the 1967 album Magical Mystery Tour. This is usually Oasis's last song at a concert. Lead guitarist for Oasis, Noel Gallagher, frequently adds strange guitar effects to parts of the song to enhance the hallucinogenic vibe. Most individuals thought this song was better suited to Oasis than the Beatles. This is part of the genius of John Lennon, who developed music based on alternative rock in 1967, long before Oasis. This song does not sound like it was written in 1967, when covered by Oasis. This song appears to have been written in the 1990s, or perhaps it was written by John Lennon for the 21st century. Nirvana. Many world musicians like the Beatles, including late Nirvana vocalist Kurt Cobain. During his life, Courtney Love's husband sang the Beatles song, And I Love Her. Kurt admitted that the Beatles and Black Sabbath inspired Nirvana's songs. He admired the Beatles, but not Paul. Aside from that, he despises the word grunge and prefers to refer to his music as alternative rock. Kurt Cobain also wrote a song that was influenced by the Beatles album. About a Girl is the title of the song. Kurt Cobain wrote this song after listening to Meet the Beatles CD 3 hours in a row. Aside from that, Nirvana/Foo Fighters drummer Dave Grohl told the press, "If it weren't for the Beatles, I wouldn't be a musician. I fell in love with their groove and flamboyance, their talent and arrogance, the dark side. All Beatles members had a dark side, notably in drugs and narcotics, and their beauty from infancy." Queen. Who hasn't heard the incredibly popular song Bohemian Rhapsody? This is widely regarded as one of the best songs ever written in the world. Although this band was not entirely inspired by the Fab Four, aka the Beatles, Queen did emulate John Lennon's tone and style of singing in the song Mother, which was retitled by the band as Life is Real and was dedicated to John Lennon. Queen guitarist Brian May has also stated that the Beatles' use of the studio, recording techniques, and portraying their exquisite instinctive harmony and sync are like the Bible to them. In addition, the Queen's song title, Need Your Loving Tonight, is identical to the Beatles' song. Aside from that, Freddie considers the Imagine album to be his all-time favorite, albeit it was not the Beatles' record, but rather John Lennon's solo album. Another example is Roger Taylor, who mistakenly believed that Queen's 1975 album, A Night at the Opera, was their Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is one of the best-selling albums by the Beatles, so those are some well-known bands who have admitted to being influenced by the British icon, the Beatles. According to the acclaimed musician David Foster, there was no musician who was not impacted by the Beatles after the Beatles era. And, to be honest, he was telling the truth. The Beatles inspired many musicians throughout the world to strive for higher levels of songwriting and music in general. Their legacy will go on in perpetuity and will never be forgotten. Beach Boys. Okay, so we're not suggesting the Beach Boys owe everything to the Beatles, but it's evident that the Fab Four were instrumental in their evolution. Brian Wilson was inspired to create Pet Sounds in response to the inventiveness of Rubber Soul. No one in rock and roll had heard it back then, Wilson added, referring to the Beatles' usage of sitar and other exotica. It truly inspired the instrumentation I use for Pet Sounds. He wrote God Only Knows the morning after hearing it for the first time. The Byrds. During his early days in Greenwich Village, Roger McGuinn began sneaking Beatles beats under traditional folk tunes. When he met up with the rest of the Byrds in Los Angeles, their collective Fab's addiction reached new heights. A trip to the movies to see A Hard Day's Night prompted them to revamp their look, purchase a Gretsch and Rickenbacker, and begin transposing Beatles harmonies onto their own brand of George-like jangle. Kiss. Gene Simmons, like many of his generation in the United States, first heard the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show. It served as a guidepost for the rest of his life. With the foundation of Kiss, his attempt to recreate that initial rush. I'm a child of the Beatles, he confessed. They made a sort of white hybrid version of American music. They could pull off anything. Little Richard, country, pop, soul, and psychedelia. There were no rules. Badfinger. The soft rockers of the 1970s owed practically everything to the Beatles, including borrowing their name from Badfinger Boogie, the working title of With a Little Help from My Friends. After signing with Apple, Badfinger enlisted George Martin as producer and scored a major first success with Come and Get It, a Paul McCartney demo recorded for the Abbey Road album. Later, George Harrison took the band under his wing as a mentor, producer, and occasional guitarist. Flaming Lips. The Beatles' psychedelic and sound collage experiments influenced the approach of Oklahoma's freakiest sons. The Flaming Lips have recreated several Lennon-McCartney songs in their live set, and a full, guest-packed rendition of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, With a Little Help from My Friends, which is set to be released in October. Wayne Coyne, the Fab's leader, has also acknowledged the Fab's broader aesthetic. He once observed, "The Beatles didn't just produce records, they represented something." The Pixies. The Pixies' frenzied surge may not suggest a clear debt, yet the harsher end of the Beatles' career left its influence on Black Francis, not to mention their appreciation for beautiful music. Francis has stated that Your Blues is one of his favorite albums, and that the live double CD from the Hamburg Star Club was one of the first songs he acquired as a child. Let's face it, every band owes the Beatles enormous gratitude. They grew their hair, invented rock music, wrote timeless songs, and elevated popular music to a serious endeavor. So those are the bands that owe a huge thanks to the Liverpool boys. So that's the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give this a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And let us know in the comments which band you like the best from this video. We'll catch up with you in the next one.